What really happens here is you have culture is what people see at work, what they hear at work, and what they believe to be as core values. So you really have things that you see, like when you come in and we see how people dress at work. We pick up the dress code quickly. Oh, everybody wears a tie here. Better wear a tie. Or it's a casual atmosphere, so we wear something more casual. Or maybe, everybody dresses business Monday through Thursday, but Friday we have Hawaiian shirt day. Josh, my name is Mark Hicks, and it is a pleasure being here today. I have a couple of roles at the university. I am an adjunct instructor in the College of Business, and I teach a couple of classes. One is a management class, and the other is a practicum in which the students actually put together a business, sell a product, and at the end give the net profit to a local charity. And then I also work over at the SBDC, as you know, as a consultant, working with people that need either a business plan or a loan or licenses and permits, usually people just getting their business started. So culture itself, company culture, is involved with an organization. When we have a group of people that spend time together, work together, and this environment that's created is this culture that comes forth. Culture really affects, when you work someplace, really affects how you think, what you do, and how you feel at work. So we think about large organizations, like Apple or something like that. We think, oh, that we understand that culture. That's a culture of, it's a culture of innovation. It's a culture of technology. It's a culture of products and all these people. And then we hear about some of the perks that they get, when they work there. And so we think, oh, that's an amazing culture that's built. But every organization has a culture. The culture itself is driven by the people at the top, just like Steve Jobs and then Tim Cook would drive Apple's culture. Wherever you work, the person at the top of your organization drives the culture. At the university, we have a president who drives the culture. Yet we all work in different departments and stuff. And so we have some of the influence of the person at the top of our department who kind of drives that, right? And these are just the key individuals that really reinforce the organization and the culture that we begin to assume. It's really the values and the beliefs and the attitudes that are shared throughout the organization. And these all come together, and these leaders continue to promote and put forward those values, beliefs, and attitudes. But specifically, the CEO is at the top, sets the tone for the organization. If we look at different organizations, we see that happening. So I talked a little bit about Apple, but if you think of Tim Cook, who's there now, and we compare him to Steve Jobs, who was there before, we have clearly more of a team player, more of someone who delegates, more of someone who's focused on growing the business, not on specific innovation. And when we think of Steve Jobs, we think of somebody who is a visionary and on the pulse of innovation, finding things to create before people even know they need them, right? Different styles, different people, but yet the core values and the beliefs are the same. And the organization's culture, though maybe affected a little bit by the change in personnel, is basically going to be the same. Core values are going to be there. And if we just take any other leader, if we take somebody like a Richard Branson, you have a completely different style, right? But if you look at the core values of Virgin Atlantic, it says our people are a passionate lot, uniting in creating something really special and something different. whenever you board one of our aircraft, chill in one of our clubhouses, or come to work here, you'll feel part of it. It's always been like this. It's in our DNA, and it was ignited within us from the moment we started flying. So you can see the core values there create this business or this culture that is different from Apple's, and again, comes from the top. And yet both companies are successful. Both companies do really well, but have different leaders at the top and different cultures. But what you have to do is, if you're going to, you're going to create this culture, you're going to shape this culture, you got to know your people. So you got to communicate with them. I worked at a business one time, and we used to, the vice president at the time would gather some people up, and I was a vice president of a region. So we go around to my regional offices, and he'd say, we're going to go on a listening campaign. And all we're going to do is listen to what people have to say. And that's where you really get out and you meet people. You set the tone of the organization. You let people know, hey, this is what our vision and our mission is. And by the way, here are our core beliefs and our core values. And these are important to us. They're important to our organization. And you begin to have people understand that in the conversation of just listening to them about what's going on in the organization, touching base with them in some kind of personalized way, and then letting them know what's important to the organization, what the culture is going to be like at your organization. So you have to know your people. You have to communicate with them. You really have to share that mission, the vision, the core values of the organization. And then they begin to understand what the culture is. And then again, they can't, just the same way, if we go back to what is heard and stuff, if somebody's doing something wrong, you need to stop it right there. We're not going to tolerate this here. This is not going to be done. You're going to go home for the day, and we're going to figure out what we're going to do with you. We may let you go depending on how bad the situation is when we get, the full story, but we're not going to tolerate this, and it needs to be done whenever an executive or a small business owner, sees shenanigans going on. It needs to be stopped right there. And that really sets a tone with people, because everybody talks. Everybody gets on the phone and says, you won't believe what happened today. And this is what he did. And then he told him to go home. And so, you get it. Everybody understands what, how people are dealt with. They want to make sure they're being dealt with fairly. So they're going to talk, and they're going to say, hey, this is our culture here. And understanding the culture, they want to believe the culture is a great place to work, right? We all want to work under a culture that's more like Disney than is more like a hard driving company that has a lot of salespeople that are just, constantly driving sales numbers, right? So that's kind of how you begin with that. And then one of the classic things are stories, right? So when we get a chance, we tell people stories about what happened in our organization to give them an idea of how they should react to things, how they should respond to things. And when something happens to them, there's a bar that's set. One of the classic stories that you hear is about a bellman that worked at a large hotel in New York City. And the bellman was working one day, and he called a taxi for one of the executives that stayed at the hotel, a lot. And he said hi to him, hey, Mr. So-and-so, I'm glad to have you back at the hotel. We'll see you later. And he takes off and he leaves his briefcase there. And so he knows, he had talked to him, and he knows he's headed to the airport. So he says, okay, I'm going to, you hold my post here, and I'm going to go to the airport. I'm going to hunt him down, and I'm going to give him his briefcase back. So he goes that extra mile, and he gets there, and the guy realizes he didn't have his briefcase, gave him his briefcase. And that's how we do it here at, whatever hotel chain it is. That's how we go above and beyond. That's how we take care of our customers. And that's what's expected of you, right? And so those are the kind of stories that are passed down in organizations, but they need to be stories of your organization, stories of how people handled things in your business the way they should, right? And, they can be a simple story, or they can be a heroic story, but they kind of set a bar for people and say, okay, I get the culture here. I understand what's happening. And I understand that, you know, if something happens, we need to go above and beyond. And then really the last thing to do there is just reinforce what you see, right? By reinforcing things that are seen, things that are heard, and eventually believe, you really want to have those be part of your culture. So you want to, you know, just let them know, hey, look, all the things that you see here are the things that are appropriate. In other words, the dress, we talked about dress code, and we talked about maybe the layout of the office. Those things need to be done the way you want them to be done, the way they should be done, so people understand that this is what you see and this is what you hear when things are done. And the core beliefs, hopefully they'll pick those up over a period of time of things that, you know, are things that we always do, we always believe, we always understand. So to improve corporate culture really requires a change. The problem with change is that change is perceived as taking something away from people, right? It's perceived as I'm going to lose something, and so I'm afraid of change. Change equals fear for most people, because what's going to happen in the new situation? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose the team that I'm working with that I built over the last 4 or 5 years? What is all this change and what's happening? Okay, so then there's resistance to the change. And that's what you have to really work with, is you have to get people to understand why change occurs. There's an old saying that's been around forever. It says, culture eats strategy for lunch. And what that means is, in the culture of the organization is difficult to change. So if you implement a new strategy or you implement a new idea, the old culture is going to eat it up by simply going, I told you that wouldn't work. Oh, no, see, it's a problem already. You know, the way we've always done it before is right. The way we've always done it before worked. And that's the way we've always done things. So they go back to the old, they go back to the comfortable, and it's difficult for them to move forward with the change. Again, especially if the change means something that's going to affect them directly. All right, so it's difficult to implement change. It's difficult to implement a new strategy or kind of change your culture just a little bit. So you've got to get people to not revert into the old way, not go back and go do things the way that they've always done them. So what we suggest is that you start with something small, something that's on the surface level, something that's observable, some kind of behavior or symbolic artifact or a value that you have or a belief, and make a small change. And reinforce that small change when people do the right thing, do it correctly. Whatever the change is, you see somebody doing it right, you compliment them, you thank them, you tell them, you encourage them, you know, make sure they're doing the right thing. That way, when people see the behavior or exhibit the behavior, the new change, the new culture, the new way, and they're encouraged, they continue to do it. And then maybe they feel like, okay, that this isn't so bad. You really need to let people know what's in it for them. You know, if we change, this is going to get better. This will be different. We'll be more productive. This is why we're doing this. We're not taking something away from you. Now, if you are taking something away from them, it's extra hard, because no, you took away my team. You changed this. You laid some people off. I don't trust you now. And the work is twice as hard, twice as much reinforcement, twice as many people walking through, encourage them to do the right thing. So we make small changes, we observe what's going on, and we use positive reinforcement when they're doing something right. Now, if they don't change at all and things don't happen, you may have to go in and do some negative reinforcement. You may need to go in and, you know, tell people we're going to change or else, or, you know, somebody's going to lose their job, or, you know, we're going to take this away from you, or something like that. But you need to get them to move, and you don't want to do the negative reinforcement. You want to do positive reinforcement and get people to change and get people to think the right way. That takes a lot of understanding, going back to listening, knowing what people are thinking, having conversations with key people, moving them over to from I'm not going to change to I'm kind of indifferent, to I will change. Those are the kinds of things that we need to be looking at with individuals, the kinds of things we need to be moving them towards. So then eventually, when you change things, when they see things, when things are different, then they will change and take the new culture as a positive thing. And pretty soon it will be the new way, or the way we've done it, for a while. The last thing you can do is to, when you hire new people, when you bring new people in, make sure that those people are consistent with the values that you have, and understanding the culture and being appreciative of that culture. You still want to implement diversity. It doesn't mean that you hire only one kind of person just because they understand your culture. By your culture, we mean that we want to be a diverse group of people that all have the same values, the same core values, and the same understandings. So that's a way that you can kind of move people towards change, and through that difficult period of doing things the way we've always done them to doing things a new way. I want to make sure that owners of small businesses understood, that there is a culture within their environment, that they at the top run that, and everybody's looking towards them, and that's what creates that culture. So not only can you create a positive culture, you can create a negative culture that does damage to your organization as well, depending on your actions, depending on what you reinforce, depending on whether you listen to people or not. So those are the things that we need to work on, and some of the things that we can do to create a good culture, and to change the culture if it's not going the way that we want it to. So.